Peace to everybody. This story is about St. Patrick and why does he have a day. And since this is St. Patrick's Day weekend, I would like to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day weekend. St. Patrick's Day is a cultural and religious holiday held annually on March 17th. Named after the patron saint of Ireland, St. Patrick the Day celebrates Irish heritage with food, parades, drinks, Irish lore, and an assortment of green colored things. Green beer, anyone? Well, so yes, it is a cultural, religious holiday that is celebrated every year on March 17th, and everything is green on that day, and they do it with food, praise, drinks, anything they can color green. Today, the holiday is celebrated around the world with much of the modern traditions inspired by Irish expatriates in the United States. So yeah, it's celebrated around the world. Every day, every year, people have fun doing whatever they're doing, and it's all over in the United States too. Who was Saint Patrick? Maewyn Succat wasn't particularly religious growing up, or even Irish for that matter, so it's a bit surprising that he became patron saint of Ireland. So this um May Sikat had grew up religious, was particularly religious growing up, and he um showed who he was and who he was. Born in Britain around AD 390, Maewyn grew up in a well-to-do Christian family, complete with slaves and property. At 16, however, Maewyn was kidnapped and whisked away to Ireland, where he himself became a slave and tended sheep for 6 or 7 years. Accounts differ. It was then that Maewyn became a deeply religious. So he was kidnapped by, we don't know who, probably the Christian family or whoever, but then he became a slave at age 16, and so that he was tending sheep for 6 or 7 years. And this is um a context, I guess it was from a Latin language. I used to say, stay out in the forest and on the mountain, and I would wake up before daylight to pray in the snow and icy coldness, in rain, and I used to feel neither ill nor any slothfulness, because as I now see, the spirit was burning in me at that time. So he would get up before daylight, start praying. It didn't matter if it was icy coldness in the rain or wherever, but he was burning the religious that he was starting to believe. Eventually, legend has it, Merlin began to hear voices, one of which told him to escape back to Britain. He managed to gain passage on a ship, but once he reunited with his family, the voice told him to return to Ireland. So here you go, you got one voice that's telling him to go back to Britain, to be with his family, then another voice that he hears, he that voice wants him to return to Ireland. So now it's kind of a pick and choose thing of where he has to be at. Before returning, he was ordained as a priest and changed his name to Patricius or Patrick, inspired by the Latin root patri, the forefather. At the time, most of Ireland was pagan, and progress was hard won by the ministry. He was often beaten and imprisoned by Irish royalty and pagan chiefs. After his death, he was largely forgotten, but Then, slowly, the legend around Patrick grew until he was honored as the patron saint of Ireland. So this Patrick, he was beaten. He was in prison, or they kidnapped him there, and he was beaten very in prison, beaten by the Irish royalty and pagan chiefs until he died. And it was a sad shame that it happened. St. Patrick's Day the American Way. Ah. St. Patrick's Day started as a minor religious holiday in 1631. The church declared it a feast day. Pubs closed and observers went to church. The original holiday bears little resemblance to today's festivities, full of parades, drinking, and green Irish food. So, yes, it started in the United States at 1631. Pubs were closed, people going to church, and everything else came into place after that, including the drinking and green Irish food. The first St. Patrick's Day parade was in America during the Revolutionary War. Irish soldiers fighting for the British marched in New York City in 1762. Since then, the tradition was spread throughout the U.S. and abroad, including Ireland. So the Revolutionary War had been around during that time, and St. Patrick's Parade was around during that Revolutionary War in 1762 in New York City. Then, of course, it has spread throughout the U.S. and abroad, including Ireland. Similarly, the food most associated with the holiday, corned beef with cabbage and potatoes, also started in the United States. So during that time, every year you got corned beef with cabbage and then potatoes. That has also started in the United States. During the Irish potato famine from 1845 to 1852, nearly 1 million Irish immigrated to the United States. Discriminated against the poor, Irish Americans began eating corned beef from neighboring Jewish butchers and delis. The corned beef simmered with cabbage, turnips, or potatoes was inexpensive and became a staple over time. This Irish American tradition became closely associated with St. Patrick's Day itself, even though people in Ireland rarely ate beef. So, 1845 to 1852, nearly 1 million Irish immigrated to the United States, and of course, they were discriminated against the poor, and so they had to go to neighboring neighborhoods or next door neighbors or whatever um to eat with them, and they would eat corned beef, cabbage, turnips, or potatoes. As for the St. Patrick Day drink of choice, Guinness originated in Ireland and their flagship brew. Guinness's stout is still brewed in their famous St. James Gate Brewery in Dublin. St. Patrick's Day revelers consumed 13 million pints of Guinnesses on the holiday in 2017. So that's a lot of beer people are drinking. 13 million pints of beer on that holiday in 2017. That's a whole lot of beer. And I bet everybody would be drunk and whatever else they would be getting into. On St. Patrick's Day, cities across the world turn iconic monuments green. The Sydney Opera House, the pyramids at Giza, and the Eiffel Tower are all lit with green lights. The Chicago River is dyed bright green. In the U.S., people who don't wear the color green on St. Patrick's Day are pinched. Green is the color of St. Patrick's Day, but why? Well, alright, you got a lot of monuments that will be turning green, and of course, so Chicago, if you go look at a video of Chicago's river, it is dark. It is dyed bright green, and it's kind of weird that it is, but it is every year. According to some scholars, the color green only became associated with Ireland and St. Patrick's Day during the Irish Rebellion in 1798. Before then, Ireland was known for the color blue since it featured primarily in the royal court and on ancient Irish flags. So before it became green, it was blue before that. In 1798, it was the Irish Rebellion. Then, after a while, it turned green. During the rebellion against Britain, however, Irish soldiers chose to wear green, the color that most contrasted the red British uniforms, and sang the wearing of the green. This firmly established the link between Ireland and the color green. So they were singing songs for St. Patrick's Day. The wearing of the greens are firmly established the link and everything, and it was all during the rebellion against the Britain. And here is another verse taken from Latin. St. Patrick's Day no more to keep, his color can't be seen, for there's a bloody law again, the wearing of the green. So people really didn't like green too much. They hated it so much, and now they have brought it back, the wearing of the green. And yeah, and it's kind of weird how people are now just starting to wear green again. What are your thoughts in the comments below? And let me know. I am out.